Good morning. This is Janine LaRue with LaRuelist Cafe. And I guess some of you are saying to yourselves, well, usually you do a rant about this time in the morning at Starbucks. So why are we seeing you on doing an actual show? Well, we decided to do this one early. It is Black History Month, as I said. And I know a lot of you will continue to look at this video from time to time. So I wanted to put it up early. So those who come in from work, you'll be able to see our guests, and hopefully you will learn something today about Crossroads Theater. And not only learn something, but you will also get yourself to New Brunswick and go to the theater. It is just an amazing edifice. We're going to talk about the new home of Crossroads. We're going to talk about the man who is one of the co-founders of Crossroads. And we're going to talk about what their program will look like moving forward over the balance of 2022. So I am excited to bring on not only the um, artistic director of Crossroads, but my good friend, Ricardo Khan. Good morning,
Hi,
sir.
good
How are
morning.
you?
I'm okay. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Look, I'm so happy to be anywhere, Rick. You know,
Yeah.
during this pandemic, I'm happy
Oh,
to be able to get up in the morning and be
and
anywhere.
hey, I hear you.
So,
I
but
hear that.
thank
I hear
you for being a part of us today. I know you and I have gone through some losses during this pandemic.
that. We
And
all have.
in
We all
fact, we
have.
went through it together. My goodness, but
Yes, yes.
we made it through, and my heart goes out to Monica.
Yeah.
Right now, I know she's going through, and all of our love to her. I know she'll be watching the show at some point. So, um, so Ricardo, I know some people call you Rick. I'm going to
Mhm.
call you Ricardo because it sounds so artistic. I just
Okay.
love,
Okay.
I just love
I'm
Ricardo.
good. I'm good with whatever. For
So,
you, whatever
so
it is.
I've known you for a few decades, and I'm really going to ask you
Hmm.
because we're here to talk about Crossroads Theater
Yes, yes.
and Crossroads Theater ending with a TRE, not a TER. And I'm going to ask you right now,
Mm,
before we talk about the theater, I want to talk about the man
mm.
because I remember seeing you when this theater was first opened up, and you were a really young man. I remember, and I'm gonna embarrass you, okay? And it's
Right.
okay to embarrass you now that I have discovered that I'm actually a lesbian, and your wife will have no problem with it. But I remember the first time you walked out on the stage, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is one gorgeous man. And when
Oh,
you began
gee.
to talk
Yes.
about your love for the arts,
Hmm.
I fell in love with it. I felt, as you know, I love Crossroads. So before we talk about the bricks and mortar, I want to talk about the spirit behind that facility. Who the heck is Ricardo Khan? And where did a name like Khan come from? You got to explain that one to me,
Okay,
sir.
well, have you asked Shaka where her name came from? Shaka Khan? Shaka Khan? My my father is from Trinidad, and my mother is from Philadelphia. They both met at Howard University, and that is where they uh, did their studies. And after that, they got married. And I think my father, who is from Trinidad of East Indian descent, which is where you get the name Khan from, also grew up Muslim. My mother, being African American from Philadelphia, grew up in the Catholic and the Baptist churches, and so the coming together and that which created me then nurtured me as a person who was not a child of just one country or one block for that matter, but I always understood myself and appreciated myself as a citizen of the world, and I think that that is what guided me in all of my uh, the things that I wanted to do from a cultural point of view and arts point of view, music. I just love everything coming from all over the world. But more importantly, as we went into it, I started to realize that what America was missing was a sense of, especially when it came to African American people, was a sense of ourselves as a world people, not just defined by the victimization that has gone on in this country and throughout our history, but what about the kings and queens we are part of? We come from our ancestral heritages from all over the world. So that was what I set out to try to do, I think, my entire life because of my family and my upbringing.
Yeah, and when you talk about that sense of belonging and looking at ourselves differently,
Yes.
that was the feel that I used to get when I was younger and just trying to find myself, the great big afro, and I wore a bunch of dashikis. And when I
Yes. Yes.
walked into Crossroads, Ricardo, I felt home. I
Yes.
felt like somebody saw me, that somebody loved me. And
Mm.
every time I would sit in those seats, I never worried about it, which portion I would stand up and say, yes, or which portion I'd applaud, because
I
it
know.
just felt like me, felt
Yeah.
like me.
You were talking about a time, Gene, when as a black person in America, if you ran, you could be in trouble. But you were making a statement. If you walked,
Mm,
you were making a statement. If you were at a baseball game and the national anthem came on, if you stood up, you were making a statement. If you didn't stand up, you were making a statement.
mm,
There was that. It was a time when that called for us to take a stand, to be active, to not be on the fence.
mm,
And so art for me and at Crossroads was not art just for art's sake. We were artists and we put excellence first in terms of what we did at Crossroads. And we continue to do that. Artistic excellence first. But let's be very clear. We also used our art to be as revolutionary as we
mm.
possibly could because we had no choice. We had to use it to survive as a people. And
Where did
so I'm
you get
glad that you
that?
were there.
Where did you get that inner spirit, though? Because when I think about the time frame when Crossroads was founded,
Right.
it was a bold step for anybody to step out, whether it was the arts, whether it was politics, whether it was education, to step out just embracing us. That was bold.
I didn't
And
know
so
any
I'm wondering
difference.
what made you come up with this concept?
It was not a concept for me, Gene. It was who I was.
Mm,
I was raised by parents who always said, embrace yourselves. Always, celebrate yourselves. And so I had been to other theaters where you walk in to the lobby and you don't feel that sense that you felt when you were at
mm,
Crossroads. You feel like a guest, right? And
mhm.
we all know what it's like to be a guest. I just wanted to change that. I wanted everybody, and it didn't matter whether you were black or white, or gay or straight, or from this country or another. It didn't matter. To be celebrated for who you are
Right.
is why we named our theater Crossroads.
Crossroads.
The coming together of many backgrounds in order to create one road emerging from a moment that is today and going forward in a way that makes us a little different when we leave the theater than we might have been when we first came
One of the things I was always, and maybe because it's a college town,
in. Hmm.
but I was always impressed with the fact that when I got my bill what do you call it?
The playbill?
The
Okay.
playbill.
Yes,
And
yes,
I,
yes.
at this age, I have brain farts all the time, so I don't write it down too much. But when I got my playbill and
Yes,
then moved into the theater, this is before you're in the new edifice, and we're going to
mm,
talk about that in a second.
yes, yes, yes.
But I would look around and I'm like, there were blacks, there were whites, there were Latinos, there were Asians, there were white tops like me, there were very young people. And I
Yes,
said,
yes,
I
yes.
wonder, and everybody was there for the same goal,
Hmm.
not just to be entertained, but to learn and to be a part of this philosophical, whatever the theme was that was going to happen across the stage that day, that
Yes.
night. How did you build that kind of embracing by multi-ethnic groups? Or did it just happen organically?
Well, I think, first of all, it was always our mission. Our first mission was about artistic excellence in the producing and presentation of the Black experience, but the Black experience for Black people and for everybody. And the second part of our mission was the building of bridges between people of different backgrounds, to create a better understanding in our world, to make a difference. And I think that, I think back on what you're saying about 1978 and the 80s, and how bold that was. I, I don't think we thought that way. I don't think we thought bold. I think we just thought us, and we just wanted to do it. I don't think it would be bold for young people today to stand up for what they believe in. I don't think it would be bold for young people today to create art and put their best self forward. That's not being bold, that's being yourself. It's
Mm,
being willing to celebrate not only who you are, but recognize why you're here in the first place. You
exactly.
have a you have a calling. You have a calling on this earth. From the moment, when George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were killed, they were not the first killed. They were not the first murdered, and they were not the first recognized. When you go back in this country to the lynchings that went on, and everything before that, and everything since then through Jim Crow, and all of that, it has required you
Mm,
to take a stand. It is our duty, like our parents used to say, each one reach one, each one teach one. Uh, the middle class of Black America used to say, lifting as we climb.
lifting as we
It,
climb.
it, it was a recognition that we have a calling to lift up ourselves and our people, but never ever lack the compassion it would take to look back behind us and help those coming, as we were helped when we came. So this is not boldness. This is a requirement if you're Black in America.
Wow. I love it. I love it. Ricardo, take us behind the scenes in the funding of this. I look at the costumes and listen to the sound effects and all of the things that we get to enjoy sitting in our seats.
Mm.
This is not inexpensive, right?
No, it's not. It is not at all. An average production for us might cost somewhere between 200 and $350,000 to produce. But that's because we are labor intensive, and we don't want and cannot replace people with machines. We cannot automate theater because theater is live, and in the rehearsal hall we can't just rehearse a show for 1 week. We work on these shows for at least a year with creative teams, and then casting and designs before we get to rehearsal. And then once we get into the rehearsal hall, we're there for another 3-4 weeks before we go into the theater. And that's where everything merges. And for a week or so, we're putting everything together before we present it to you. But everything prior to you is just us getting ready for you. And theater does not exist until you are there. It is the connection between what's on stage and what's in the audience that makes it theater, and it's quite unique. Oh, you know what? That's what I realized. Back in the day, but now as well. When we were starting Crossroads, you looked around, and the communities in our neighborhood, in our city, they didn't have playgrounds anymore.
Mm.
They didn't have the YMCA and the YWCA and they didn't have the places where we can come together, except for one place, and that's Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
But other than that, we didn't have the place where we can come together and actually experience something as community. And that was another reason why it was important to do Crossroads. Now, the fact that there is for so many of us Sunday morning, we also have to recognize that Sunday morning is probably the most segregated time in America,
It truly
right?
is.
Yeah. So Crossroads was about recognizing everybody and lifting up the importance and beauty of community.
See, let me tell you, you said something else, and we're going to deal with that toward the end
Okay.
of the show. You said
Okay.
something else interesting. Now, you said there is no theater until you're there.
That's right.
And toward the end, we're going to talk about that because
Okay.
I want see, you don't see my mask on during my presentation,
I
and
love
I'm
it.
feeling a little bit more comfortable. I'm
All
good
right.
and all. I'm ready to put my butt in the seat now.
Yes, yes,
I'm ready
yes.
to come on out, and
And
we're going to
we're
talk
ready for
about what's
you.
coming. So
We are ready for
yeah,
you. Yes, yes,
Crossroads
yes.
has been good to me, and I'm ready to get back in the saddle again.
Yeah.
So, some of the famous people, tell me about some of your productions that actually were on Broadway at one time, and
Yeah.
we got to see them at Crossroads, and then some of the famous folks who came by. The last famous person I saw at Crossroads, and I think it was one of her last appearances anywhere, was
Mhm.
Ruby Dee.
Oh
When
God.
she
God
came
bless
to
Miss
see
D.
her, when she came to see her son perform. Now I have to tell you, there's something funny about my beloved late Maria.
Yes.
We have a photograph that the family, as an inside joke, we laugh about all the time because
Mm,
Maria said when she came there, she said, "Janine, I'm getting a photo with Ruby Dee." And I
mm,
said, "No, Ree, we can't do that." I said, "I don't think that she's feeling well, and
mhm.
we really, I said, we really can't ask her to take a photo."
Ah.
So Ruby Dee was talking with a young lady, and while they were chatting, Maria just went over and just sat on the edge of the chair like this. And
Mhm.
I'm saying to her in the back, "No, no." She says, "Take the picture."
Take a picture. That's right.
And I snapped the picture. And there's a picture we have of Maria and Ruby Dee. It is
Oh,
priceless, but
oh,
you
that's
can
beautiful.
tell Maria was doing something she should not have been doing. It really was wonderful. But
I think
tell
that's
me about the
beautiful.
productions that have been on Broadway and the people who have come through
Yes, yes,
Crossroads.
yes. Well, you mentioned Maria, so I want to mention our time with uh, Rosa Parks, for example,
Mm.
and we were doing a play about Rosa Parks. Denise Nicholas wrote the play. It was her first play that she wrote, and you remember Denise
Oh,
Nicholas
yes.
from Room 222 and
Hmm.
In the Heat of the Night. Well, this was while she was doing In the Heat of the Night, and and we gave her the opportunity to do her first play, to write her first play. She had just been in our production of Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston called To Gleam It Around to Show My Shine. And she starred in that at Crossroads. That was one of our first stars that we had.
Wow.
But because now she was doing a show about Rosa Parks came to see it.
Really?
And not only did she come that one day, she stayed with us the whole weekend, right? So we had her for a few days with us, whining and dining her, and just making sure that we were
How
taking
old was she
care of
then,
her.
Ricardo?
Well, this was in the late '80s, right?
Okay.
So I
She was
I would
elderly.
say she was up there for sure. Let's put
Yeah.
it this way: we had to take care of her. We wanted to make sure that she was protected and taken care. So we went to a restaurant in New Brunswick, and it was about five of us, six of us, and our table wasn't quite right. And I asked, can we move, please? So they said, of course, of course. So we moved to another table. Now the table was underneath a draft air conditioning. I said, no, 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 this is not going to happen today. So then they finally moved us. We settled down. Everything was fine. They brought the food in. I'm sitting next to Miss Parks. The food comes, and this is what reminds me of Maria, right?
Uh-huh.
She's sitting right next to me, and you wouldn't expect somebody to do what they do sometimes, but we do that. And Rosa Parks looks at her plate of food. She looks at mine, and she says, "Are you going to eat that?" And I'm thinking, Rosa Parks, Rosa Parks. We've had
I
one of
love
our
it.
first right behind me is Smokey Robinson,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Smokey came and folks would do benefits for Crossroads. Smokey Robinson did, Wynton Marsalis, Dionne Warwick. Ray Charles was the first one who did that sort of thing with us. But there's Wynton Marsalis is right there. Um, Let me see. This is there are all kinds of folks up there. This is Coretta Scott King, came to see Sheila's Day. This is my mother up there, up here, and my father, right? And I just think that along the way, our goal was always to provide a home for people who didn't need Crossroads. So
Mm.
the question I had for folks was, well, what is it you always wanted to do, but you don't think you could do anywhere else, but the way you could do it here? And if you came up with an answer, it didn't matter what it was. I wanted to help you. I wanted to provide a home for you. And that is where George C. Wolfe started,
Mm.
who wrote The Colored Museum, which premiered at Crossroads. And that's where he met Anna Devere Smith, at Crossroads. It's where Ruby Dee came and was in residence at Crossroads for years. And then Ossie Davis would always join,
Oh yeah.
and their son Guy Davis,
Yeah.
and so one year, here's a real quick story. So one year, uh, Ms. D says, "Well, what show do you want to do?" I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" She said, "Well, I have a whole trunk of them."
Mm.
And then she had this idea. She said, "Look, why don't we take a day, and I will bring out everything from my trunk, and we'll just go through it all.
Oh
And
wow.
I'll perform them for you in the rehearsal hall and see what you like." This was Ruby Dee talking.
Oh
Well,
my goodness.
that's not the end of the story. The day comes, and her husband is in Florida, working on a movie, right, with Burt Reynolds. And he's doing a movie, and he calls Ruby and he says, "Well, dear, do you want me to help you?" And she said, "Sure." So, so Burt Reynolds lent Ossie Davis his jet plane to travel up to be with his wife and help his wife tell
Wow.
these stories to us, and then hop back on the plane and went back down. And I'm thinking, boy, if that's
Mm.
not royalty,
Right.
if that's not love, what is? Uh,
Wow.
the so I mean, these are the people. Now when we did Black Eagles about the Tuskegee Airmen, we met a lot of the original Tuskegee Airmen.
That
But
was so touching.
one yeah, and one person, and then later the next you know edition of it was called version of it was called Fly. But in
Hmm.
each of those cases, Roscoe Brown, Dr. Roscoe Brown, who was one of the original members of the Tuskegee Airmen, was our main consultant. And
Wow.
I'll never forget that. So we have a lot of people who are our heroes, Gene, who have come through Crossroads,
Mhm.
some household names and some who are not, but all heroes. And
Fly brought
that's
me
it.
to tears.
Yeah.
I sat there. That production, Fly.
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes,
was
yeah. We
yeah, I
love it.
wasn't prepared for the ending. That was beautifully done. All of it
Yes,
beautifully
thank
done.
you. Thank you.
Now, tell me about the building. So, I remember when there was a discussion that, oh, this building is going to come down and there's going to be another edifice, and the
Mm,
signage outside isn't going to say Crossroads. And I remember I kept saying to, yeah, I was coming to, on a regular basis to
mhm,
productions there and other
mhm,
events. And I'm like, I don't think I like this idea. I don't think
mhm,
I like this idea. And
mhm.
then when you asked me to join your group on that panel,
It was at town hall. That's
my
right. I
goodness.
thought,
And
yes.
I walked into that building and I was like, we have arrived. Tell us about this new building.
Yes, well, I agree with you. I was not here. I left Crossroads in '99, and I lived in Trinidad for a year, and then spent a lot of time in South Africa. And then during those years, I started to write. So during those years of conversations about knocking Crossroads down, I was not a part of it. I didn't even know it was happening, and I think that people knew I was going to be upset. When I came, I had the same reaction you did to the new building, which is, oh my God, how magnificent it is, and not only that, but we're able to focus where we need to focus, which is on doing our work, creating the best theater we can, experiences we possibly can, without worrying about, oh my God, this toilet doesn't flush. How do we fix that? Or or what have you. Marshall Jones was the producing artistic director for a long time, keeping Crossroads together. And when he left, which was in the once they got Crossroads into the new facility, I had come in a few months later, and it was a very difficult thing for me. I was in this beautiful place, but I was trying to figure out, well, how do we reinsert our identity? Because by that time, Crossroads had created its own identity, and and how do we do that if we're one of many organizations sharing the same space? And not that I have any problem with sharing. It's not that. Our shingle wasn't up anymore. And so, how do we create the environment that people recognize as Crossroads? And so, it occurred to me that the way to do it was to take over the entire building for a period of time so that everything happening in the center is Crossroads, from our music in the lobby and food and conversation to artwork and having a bookstore and all of those things that created the frame for the shows that we did. And then you have two theaters that we have in there, beautiful theaters, both of which accommodate Crossroads shows during the festivals. And then Saturday mornings we would do free family Saturdays for young people, for children and their parents and guardians. And then every night we would open up our rehearsal hall to community groups, community arts groups who have something they either want to present or something they're working on. So it was all Crossroads. It was all multi-generational. It was all trying to bring back that sense of identity, who we are as a people, as a cross-cultural audience, and as a theater. And
Now,
and
this
part of
really
that was you.
Crossroads.
Part of that was you, Gene. I just love. I gotta say, you were so magnificent. You moderated our very first town hall,
Oh,
and I
and I had
love
a
that.
ball doing it. And I'll tell you something, as you know, because it was at the height of the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time I had come out in amongst more than 4 people in a room.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first time, and I did it for you, Ricardo. I did it for you in Crossroads. And I remember when they said, well, we're serving food, and I was starved. And I'm like, now I'm out here. I really should be home. I'm so afraid of this virus, and I'm hungry. What am I going to do? And I remember Mark Sharp said, "No, Miss LaRue, we can give you a room upstairs." And I'm like, "Upstairs?" And I'm thinking of the old building.
Yes.
When he unlocked that building, I sat down. I said, "Well, I can stay here for the hour. I
Yes.
can do this."
It is such a
Oh, but
beautiful place. It
the
is a
panel was
beautiful
great. The
place.
evening, and
It's a beautiful place.
so I want to conclude with some conversation about this pandemic because we've had two. Everybody talks about the two pandemics.
Hmm.
We've had the virus itself,
Hmm.
and then we had the social justice, and it has been a tough 2 years.
Hmm. Hmm.
Restaurants have taken a huge hit. Movie theaters have taken a huge hit. And it goes back to your comment. There is no theater without you.
That's right.
How did you survive during this pandemic? Because you did, and you did it well. How did you improvise?
Well, we knew that we had to go online, and that's in the first months. No one knew how long it was going to take to get beyond this, and we're not beyond it now. But we went online and we started a program where every first 2 weeks of every month we would go back into the Crossroads archives and reproduce shows and bring back original artists, which who we interviewed. I would interview them, from Andre DeShields, who had just won a Tony Award and who's now starring in Hadestown, to Melba Moore. We had done. I didn't mention Melba, but we had done Melba's autobiography. She starred in a show called Sweet Songs of the Soul, and I wanted to recreate it, and we redid that with Melba. In fact, in my living room, because we couldn't get into the theater. So we did shows like that. We reproduced Colored Museum. We did all of these online, and we were able to attract people from all over the world. And then we also supported emerging artists, young people, every third week. And we had town halls like the one you did, so that Crossroads could lean into the conversations that were happening today. The one you did was about the vote, the importance of voting. Uh, I think that was our way. Now, the last thing we did was starring Sweet Honey in the Rock. And we did that in September, as you know, this past
I
September.
missed it, and I'm so angry. I idolize that group. I am so
Oh, they
angry.
were beautiful. They were so beautiful.
Oh,
We had to rehearse that show with masks on the entire time.
wow.
And can you imagine what they had to go through to be able to sing with masks on for
They
3 weeks
performed with
rehearsing?
mask on, Ricardo?
No. Then when we
Oh,
went
okay.
down to the
They performed
theater, it
for
was
that.
big enough. The audience had to keep their masks on,
Mhm.
but they were able to perform without it. And we did a beautiful, beautiful show called When Day Comes, which was about the pandemic,
Mm.
and about everything we went through for 2 years. Not just the pandemic health wise, but the issues of social injustice that were rearing their heads so vividly during that time. So that's how we got through. We're still not through it yet,
Mhm.
but we are live again, Gene.
Okay.
Theater in America is live again.
I'll be back. I'm coming.
And we're going to continue to do our online programming. And in fact, a lot of those programs, including a tribute we did to Cicely Tyson, uh, are on our website. So you can
Okay.
go on the website and you can see a lot of video programs that were done during the time of the pandemic, and stories that will continue. But what we're doing next will be in June, and we're looking forward to it. You mentioned Guy Davis,
Yes.
Ruby and Ossie's son. He's doing a show he's starring in and wrote. And at the same time, we're doing a new play called Freedom Rider, about the
Freedom Ride.
Freedom Riders of 1961, and then again a whole bunch of other things at the same time during the festival.
Well, I'm going to now. How the theater? How many seats are we talking? How many do you seat?
Well, in one, and we are still spacing some sections out, by the way,
Okay,
so
good.
that if you want to come and you want to be distanced, there are
I'm
sections in
bringing
our
a
audience.
group,
Okay,
Ricardo. I'm bringing a group.
all right,
All right,
okay,
for
that's
the Freedom
wonderful.
Rider. I want to bring a group,
Yes.
and so how many? How large are these theaters?
Well, you're talking one theater will seat about 450 to 500 people, and another theater will be seating about a little less than 300. In our rehearsal halls, we seat 100, and for our free Saturday music series for families, we seat about 100.
Beautiful. All right.
Yes, yes,
Well, I'm going in June. I'm going to bring a crew in of at least 20 people that I
yes.
will be
Beautiful.
responsible for. I'm
I
excited.
love.
Memberships are still available.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
And
All of that the
you know,
website that I have scrolling here.
yes, and you mentioned Monica. She's there, but so is Roz Neal and Susan
And Susan
Settles. They're
Little,
still
my
there,
girls.
and we're,
You know
you
what?
know,
They're strong. They've been hanging in. And look, Karen Hilton has been on here making little comments. You don't know her yet, but when I was honored by you folks over at the doctor's house across the street,
yes,
I
yes,
guess he was chair of the board at the time,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
Karen came and took
Ishmael.
all of the photos for us.
Oh,
We
that
have
is
a
so.
beautiful, uh, yeah.
That is so beautiful. We're
So
going to be ready for you, and I thank you for all of the support, Gene, that you've always given to us. And I think of you fondly every time I think about that town hall. We're going to continue them, but for you spreading the word and bringing people, that's the best thing. That's the best thing in the world. You know, you remember us from the old days in the
yes,
old
I do.
theater, and you had to find a place to park, and then you worried all the time about
Yeah,
whether or not your car was going to be there, and then you had to walk along the sidewalk with broken
on
glass and all
Livingston,
of
right?
that. Yeah, and then you had to go up the stairs, those stairs. This is when we were on Memorial Parkway,
Yeah.
right on Route 18. The reason that customer service is so important to us, and why people like Roz and Susan in the audience greet you. One, of course, it's to celebrate you, but the other, it's we realize you take a journey every
Mm,
time you come into the theater,
yes.
and we just want to welcome you. And we in the old days had to overcome all that broken glass and everything you had to
Mhm.
go through. Now we don't have the broken glass. Now it's beautiful,
It's
but
beautiful.
we still have the need to welcome you and celebrate you. And just like you said, when you come to Crossroads, you feel like you're home.
Yeah.
Artists feel that way, stars feel like that, and we want our audience to, no matter who you are, no matter the color of your skin or your religion or whatever, be there, and we'll be there with you.
Well, to LaRuelist Cafe, this is my friend, Ricardo Khan. I love him so much, so much. And let me tell you, we're live streaming right now on Facebook, on my Facebook page. We're also live streaming right now on LaRuelist Cafe Facebook page. We're on YouTube right now,
Okay.
and we have a LaRuelistCafe.com website. So I'm asking our viewers, pass this all around. Go up on that website, Crossroads Theatre Company.org, and let's all support the arts. We're back.
We're back.
We're back. We're back.
Yeah.
Happy Black History Month. I
Happy
love
Black History.
you.
Love you.